Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. In today's video, we are going to be doing a full and comprehensive guide for the brand new 5-star Electro Polearm character, Cyno. So honestly, let's just get right into it because there's a lot of information to cover, and if I fill it up with the usual amount of fluff that I usually do, we are not going to get anywhere. He, like most characters, has 3 talents: his normal attacks, which are just for his physical spear attacks. Basically, they just do physical damage unless you're using Cyno a lot in the overworld and you want to clean up trash mobs a little bit faster. There's very little reason to spend resources on your normal attacks, so as such, you can see that I haven't leveled these at all. Now, his elemental skill, on the other hand, outside of his burst, he does kind of this spear lunge version, and that spear lunge version generates 3 particles from what I've seen pretty consistently, and it has a 7.5 second cooldown. Now, during his elemental burst, he turns it into a mortuary right version, where he slams into the ground. He does a little jump, then he slams into the ground with his claws. And that is only during his elemental burst, and it also has a 3-second cooldown. If you use his E, you'll see that it has a 7-second cooldown, but then you use his burst, it shortened his E's cooldown, subtracted, I believe, 4.5 seconds off the cooldown to, change it into the 3 cooldown variation. You can see here that the eyeball pops up, and then you can do a further enhanced E, which shoots out 3 of those shockwaves. And those Dust Stalker bolts, is that what they're called, is determined by his first passive, Featherfall Judgment. Each of these bolts does 100% of Cyno's attack. Now, importantly, these count as elemental skill damage. However, also importantly, they are not buffed by this 35% Chasmic Soulfare buff, which buffs this multiplier right here. Now let's talk about his elemental burst. The multipliers here, these are his normal attacks during his elemental burst, as well as his charge attack during elemental burst. Now, unlike the Raiden Shogun, these count as normal attack and charge attack damage if you do use his charge attack, but you really shouldn't be using his charge attack much from what I've seen. Why that's important is that it determines your artifact choice as well as, some weapon buffs. And it works with things like Yunjin, it works with things like Beidou because it counts as normal attack damage. So his Elemental Burst also gives you 100 bonus Elemental Mastery, and it has a 10-second duration, 20-second cooldown, and 80 energy cost. However, this duration is called Basic Duration for some reason, but anyway, you can extend this duration by 4 seconds by using a Mortuary Right version of his Elemental skill during the Eyeball thing. So if you get the Eyeball thing and use his Elemental skill, then you extend his Elemental Burst by 4 seconds up to a total of 18 seconds, which is listed right here. So next, let's talk a little bit about his combo game. So really, he's pretty free form in terms of like his combo game and his normal attacks and stuff. But the most important thing is to just use an elemental skill during the eyeball animation. The eyeball animation does last for a couple of seconds, so you do have a couple of seconds to actually press E and get the enhanced version. And what's important about the eyeball thing is that it happens once every 4 seconds and can occur a maximum of 4 times during Cyno's burst. So on the screen, you'll see the combo that I've been doing, which is just the basic standard combo with no additional attack speed, with I think the Gilded Dreams was the artifact set that I was using. And this has been roughly the attack string that I use with him when it comes to non-altered combos. But I will be talking about slightly altered combos with, for example, the Thundering Fury as well as attack speed further on in this video. Let's quickly talk about Cyno's ICDs as well. His normal attacks appear to have standard ICD. I did not check his charge attack. His elemental skill appears to have no ICD, at least on the primary hit. Now, an enhanced Mortuary Right version of his elemental skill also shoots out these 3 Dust Stalker bolts. And these Dust Stalker bolts appear to have standard ICD because only 1 out of the 3 of them ever seems to apply Aggravate. For talent priority, Elemental Burst, then Elemental Skill, and yeah. Next, let's talk about some artifact options for Cyno, and I'm just going to keep this pretty quick, and here is the full chart. So let's talk about the Thunder Soother first, which does actually increase his damage overall by the most by a little bit. However, because of the way that the Thunder Soother works as well as Electro on the enemy, because of the way Quicken works, it actually removes Electro off the enemy when Dendro hits an enemy with both Dendro and Electro. Therefore, the Thunder Soother set isn't particularly reliable. Now, also keep in mind that these are all calculations for Aggravate as a reaction, because we are assuming that Cyno is being built to do Aggravate damage. I am still going to give it a reasonable 3.5 slimes out of 5 slime rating. And the next artifact set we're talking about is definitely the Gladiator's Finale. So the Gladiator's Finale increases attack by 18% as well as provides pole arm characters with 35% additional normal attack damage. Now, a lot of the damage from Cyno does come from his normal attacks, as he does a lot of them throughout his string. And while this barely increases his elemental skills damage, this does provide a big boost, in fact the biggest boost to his normal attack damage on this list of artifacts. So because of how we've already farmed a ton of Gladiators pieces and we probably already have some pretty good sets of it, I am going to give this a 4.5 slime rating because, well, it barely underperforms the highest damage one, which is the next artifact set that I'm going to talk about. So the Gilded Dreams is by a hair the highest amplifier for Cyno's damage, and actually it also depends on what weapon you're using. In this simulation or in these calculations, I'm using the Refinement 1 Staff of Scarlet Sands, which provides a ton of attack. The Gilded Dreams is probably the best artifact set in terms of his overall damage output, and I'm giving it a 5 slime out of 5 slime rating. So next I want to talk about the Thundering Fury, which adds electro damage as well as 20% additional damage to Aggravate. So this one is interesting because it also reduces your cooldowns by 1 second every 0.8 seconds, or just, essentially pretty much when you trigger Aggravate. Now this might sound like you will do like a lot more DPS because you'll get more elemental skills with it, but really when I did the calcs for the combos and stuff, it ended up being very similar, even though the Thundering Fury combo is quite different from the just regular Gilded Dreams combo. But what's also great about the Thundering Fury is that it helps alleviate some energy issues because of the couple additional E's that you get throughout it, as well as it lowers your Q's cooldown, which can line up better depending on what teammates you have with Cyno. So next let's talk about stat prioritization for his artifacts, and this gets a little bit tricky actually for Cyno, but like most DPS characters for Cyno, the number one priority is crit rate and crit damage. Remember that Cyno has crit damage as an ascension stat, so oftentimes your crit stats are going to be even more lopsided because of that, so you typically want more crit rate than crit damage with him. Now, in terms of the other stats, in particular attack percent and elemental mastery, this actually depends on a few different factors, and mostly it's based on the weapon that he's using. With a weapon like the Staff of Scarlet Sands as well as the White Tassel, these two weapons you really want an elemental mastery timepiece. However, for the other weapons, while yes, an elemental mastery timepiece is slightly better, or an attack percent timepiece is slightly better, for most of the other weapons, either timepiece will work pretty well. For the goblet, electro damage goblet, and for the circlet, you just want to get the circlet that helps balance your crit ratio to that golden 1:2 ratio that you want to target. Next, let's finally talk about Cyno's weapon options. The first weapon and the baseline on this chart is the Missive Wind Spear. And at Refinement 5 with its buff up, this is going to be the baseline for this chart. It is the upcoming event weapon. A decent option for a completely free-to-play weapon, deserving a 2.5 slime out of 5 slime rating. The next weapon to talk about is the Blackcliff Polearm. Blackcliff Polearm, just a reasonable, decent, solid stat stick, and the crit damage stat on it is very nice. The next weapon worth mentioning is the Lithic Spear. The Lithic Spear right now has the problem of there not being a Dendro character from Li Yue, but perhaps in the future we will get a Dendro character from Li Yue. But for now, I think it's deserving of a 2.5 slime out of 5 slime rating. Another weapon we're talking about is the Katane Crossfire, which does have the beneficial Elemental Mastery substat. And this weapon's also nice because it helps shore up your energy issues while not dealing too much less damage than the Missive Wind Spear. In many situations with Cyno, doing like 8% less damage isn't as important as pretty much reliably getting his burst up. So the weapon that I showcased in my Constellation 0 video was the Moon Piercer. Now the Moon Piercer, in my opinion, is honestly not a great weapon for Cyno, but it's not like horrifically bad either, considering if you have plenty of spear billets, like I had 16 of them, I decided to just bring this one up to refinement 5 and showcase it. But the leaf that you have to pick up and chase is honestly pretty annoying, and you can actually like dash through it sometimes and you won't even pick it up, which can be pretty aggravating, and frustrating at the same time. So yeah, I give this weapon a 2 slime out of 5 slime rating. One more 4-star weapon that's worth talking about is the Dragon's Bane. So the Dragon's Bane unfortunately is not great with an aggravate team, which this chart is for aggravate. However, it is good for an electric charge team. But yeah, I rank this weapon for aggravate purposes and it deserves a 1.5 slime for that purpose. Next we have the Death Match, which is also a good 4-star weapon for Cyno. Now even though it doesn't do much more damage than for example the Missive Spear, the fact that it has crit rate as a substat is very nice for Cyno, because again he has crit damage as an ascension stat, which makes his stats very lopsided at times, and the crit rate here really helps balance out his crit stats. I'm giving the Deathmatch a 3 slime out of 5 slime rating. However, the best free-to-play weapon option is likely going to be the White Tassel. The White Tassel has a good amount of crit rate as well as having a ton of bonus damage to normal attacks. Unfortunately, I don't have the White Tassel on my account, but if you do happen to have this weapon and you don't want to, waste resources on the Missive Wind Spear, the Moon Piercer, whatever, I actually do recommend using the White Tassel, as it's going to be a great option for Cyno because he does a lot of damage with his basic attacks. In the end, it ends up doing about 8% more damage, as well as having crit rate as a substat, which Cyno really appreciates, and therefore I'm giving this one a 3 slime out of 5 slime rating. Next, let's talk about Cyno's 5-star weapon options, starting with the Staff of Scarlet Sands. This thing is by far and away his best weapon. Yeah, it's his signature weapon after all. And what it does is it provides a bunch of Elemental Mastery scaling attack. So the more Elemental Mastery you have, the more attack you have. Let's say you have 1000 Elemental Mastery. At 3 stacks of this thing, you will gain 136% of your Elemental Mastery as attack, which ends up being 1360 attack. However, to keep in mind that it does take a little bit of ramp up time, because you have to use your elemental skill and hit an enemy with it 3 times for it to get the maximum attack buff. Regardless, this is by far and away his best weapon, and it having crit rate as a substat is just the cherry on top. It definitely deserves a 5 slime out of 5 slime rating for Cyno. In my opinion, the second best weapon for him is kind of a toss-up between the Primordial Jadewing Spear and the Staff of Homa, each with their comparative advantages, with the Staff of Homa at baseline doing a good amount more than the Primordial Jadewing Spear. However, it's unlikely that you'll always be under 50% HP, but it's very likely you'll pretty much always get 7 stacks against any durable enemy. And at 7 stacks, the Primordial Jadewing Spear does end up being a bit better than the Staff of Homa. And it's also nice that the Primordial Jadewing Spear has crit rate, which is a stat that Cyno really appreciates. Regardless, both of these 5-star weapons are good on him, and they both deserve a 3.5 slime out of 5 slime rating. Next, we have a couple of stat sticks, which are the Vortex Vanquisher and the Calamity Queller. There's really not much to say about them, and I think they deserve a 2.5 slime out of 5 slime rating. After that, we actually have the Skyward Spine. And the Skyward Spine is interesting because the actual combo is a little bit better because you can squeeze in a few additional auto attacks or normal attacks. As such, its overall damage ends up being very similar to the Missive Wind Spear. This is because of the 12% additional bonus attack speed that this weapon just passively provides, and it even giving a little bit of crit rate is nice as well. And on top of that, it gives you energy recharge, which will help Cyno's energy management. So I actually think this is a viable option for Cyno, and I'm going to give this weapon a 3 out of 5 slime rating. So here's the full chart in all its glory. Feel free to pause the video at this point to take a closer look at it. But yeah, hopefully you found it helpful. The next thing we're going to talk about are Cyno's Constellations. As you can see, I have not activated them yet. So this is all going to be very purely just theory crafting, and hopefully you'll still find some of it helpful. Now, Cyno's Constellation 1 adds 20% attack speed, and effectively it just adds it throughout the entire duration of his burst. I did a quick test with a Constellation 2 Gene's 15% attack speed for about 15 seconds of his elemental burst, and I did find a slightly better combo, squeezing out a few extra attacks. Overall though, that additional attack speed it's pretty difficult to quantify. From this initial test with just 15% attack speed, I got about a 6% bump to his overall damage output during a full rotation. It's likely we'll see maybe 1 or 2 percentage points more with a full 20%, and perhaps even more than that once we actually optimize combos. But right now, this is just my initial impression, and I'm gonna give this just a 2 slime out of 5 slime rating. And next is his Constellation 2, which is looking much better for him, which provides up to 50% electro damage. Cyno is a character that actually really lacks in the bonus damage multiplier and has a ton in the attack percent multiplier because he scales off of EM as well for his attack. So yeah, this one shores up that low multiplier of his, and just with no teammates or anything, it ends up boosting his damage by an additional 36% on top of his Constellation 1. Now, because of the very large damage gain that he gains from this, I'm giving this a 4 slime out of 5 slime rating. Next is his Constellation 3, which provides 3 levels to his elemental burst. And unlike most other characters, which actually gain like an 18% increase overall to their damage from their talent levels, Cyno is one of those characters that gains much less from leveling up his talent levels. And this is because of all the flat damage that's in his kit that scales off of his Elemental Mastery. And as such, usually I would give a Constellation like this for, let's say, Raiden a 4 or even 5 slime out of 5 slime rating, but for Cyno, because it's such a small gain in comparison, I'm giving this a 3 slime out of 5 slime rating. Next is Constellation 4, which provides 3 elemental energy for all nearby party members except for himself up to 5 times, for a total of up to 15 energy for his teammates. This is nice, and it's going to help his rotations as well as energy management for his teammates, but most of his teammates are already built with a ton of energy recharge or don't even care about their burst. But perhaps with future Dendro characters and things like that, this could be even more valuable. But for now, I'm going to give this a humble 3 slime out of 5 slime rating. Next, we have his Constellation 5, which provides 3 levels to his elemental skill. Unfortunately, this is not a big gain because, again, his elemental skill also fires off those Dust Stalker bolts, as well as the those Dust Stalker bolts scaling with Elemental Mastery. As such, his overall damage output for his elemental skill barely ticks up at all due to the talent level increase. And last but certainly not the least, we have his Constellation 6. It looks a little bit confusing, but pretty much when he uses his burst, and then each time he uses an enhanced elemental skill, he will gain 4 additional Dust Stalker bolts that are fired off with his normal attacks. And in total, from at least just reading this description, I'm assuming we get 20 additional total bolts during his full rotation, as well as 8 of those bolts aggravating roughly. I'm just being a little bit more generous because I'm gonna, you do these bolts spaced out. Either way though, this definitely boosts his damage output by a significant amount, and I'm gonna give him a 4 slime out of 5 slime rating. Last but not least, we have the Staff of Scarlet Sands going up to Refinement 5, and this is going to be a pretty significant additional boost on top of the rest of the boosts in his kit. So yeah, just another easy 4 slime out of 5 slime rating. By the time he's at Constellation 6 with a still Refinement 1 Scarlet Sands, he's doing about double the damage as a Constellation 0 Cyno, and with the Refinement 5 Scarlet Sands as well as Constellation 6, he is going to do about 235% of the damage of a Constellation 0 Cyno with a Refinement 1 Staff of Scarlet Sands. Next, let's talk about some team compositions. We're going to start off by talking about his Aggravate teams. So his Aggravate teams, it's going to require him plus 1 Dendro character. The other 2 slots are pretty flexible, but most people I think are going to enjoy using Fischl a lot, because she provides that a lot of additional damage with her passive, as well as providing a lot of additional electro particles, which will help Cyno a lot with his energy problems. Now next is we have the 4th slot. It's going to be very popular to run Zhongli. Zhongli obviously providing a shield to protect Cyno because Cyno does not have super armor. He gets easily interrupted. These 2 slots are very flexible. The main restriction is that they should not be Hydro and they should not be Pyro. So for example, I even tried Constellation 6 Diona to shore in for Zhongli because she heals as well as provides a shield, and her Constellation 6 provides 200 Elemental Mastery. So yeah, you are not restricted to just Dendro Electro characters, but you can use Geo as well as Cryo. Now another potential option for this is a double geo support core. So you can run this, for example. They're not going to interfere with aggravate, which is great, and you know, very solid, literally, core to protect as well as to do some additional damage. Now the next variant is going to be a Hyperbloom variant. You need an Electro, which is Cyno. You need a Hydro, which is usually Xingqiu, and you need a Dendro, which is Dendro Traveler in this case. Yeah, so you've already got 3 of your slots filled out. Now the 4th slot, I think Beidou is going to be a very popular choice because not only is she Electro, but she also does not interact, her burst does not interact with the blooms on the ground. That means that you can build Cyno with Elemental Mastery and then use him to activate the Hyper Blooms. So yeah, I cannot speak for Electrocharge teams because I have not tried Cyno with Electrocharge. Either way though, for an Electrocharge team, you don't want to use the Thundering Fury. Most likely you'll probably want to stick with something like the Gilded Dreams. Yeah, that about wraps up this video. Cyno is an interesting character. Hopefully some of the math helped you guys decide what weapons to use. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Win to Lose, signing out.
審判を下す。勝利をしてやれ。お前の罪を。断罪の時。頼りにした。これが改ざん。信頼感度。勝利をしてやれ。お前の罪を償うがいい。さあ。断罪の時。罪を償うがいい。じゃあ、はっと、やー、はい、股間奥義、雨描きがだし、メダイン、炭になるがいい。この身で万象を粛清する。審判を下そう。せい、罪を償うがいい。はっ、審判を下そう。じゃあ